You enter the room, close the door, and even though no one is there, the noise remains, not the noise of the world, but the one that hides behind your thoughts. A static hum that doesn't scream. It pulses. It lingers inside the spaces between what you say and what you mean. It's the voice you try to outrun by staying busy, but it always waits. It knows where you go. It lives where you pause. You've learned to call it thinking, but it's something else. It's the accumulation of every unspoken fear, every regret you replay like a silent movie, every false belief that learned to whisper like truth. You look fine, you smile, you function, but there's a weight behind your eyes that no one sees, a tiredness that sleep can't fix, because it's not the body that's tired, it's the mind. Tired of pretending, tired of explaining, tired of carrying thoughts that were never really yours. There is a kind of noise that wears the costume of logic. It doesn't raise alarms, it just stays, and the more you ignore it, the louder it becomes. Some thoughts don't arrive like thunder. They arrive like dust, so subtle you don't even notice when they've covered everything. You try to clean them away with routines, but they return because they weren't meant to be managed, they were meant to be released. You start to wonder how much of what I believe is just repetition, how many of my fears are echoes from someone else's silence, and how many of these thoughts have I mistaken for truth just because they've been here too long. Breathe, because this moment, this stillness right now, might be the first time you're truly listening, not to the world, not to the noise, but to the absence underneath it, the space between your thoughts, the self beneath the performance. And in that space, a single question waits, soft, honest, unavoidable. How many of these noises have you carried as if they were truth? There's a moment, usually in the quiet, when you feel it, not a scream, not even a thought, just a shift, like your soul pulled a few inches back from your life. It happens when you're brushing your teeth, driving alone, waiting for something that doesn't arrive, a subtle discomfort, like being watched by a memory. And suddenly you realize your mind has been speaking for hours without ever saying anything real. That's the first noise you need to notice, not the loud chaos outside, but the constant commentary inside. It dresses itself in concern. It pretends to be helpful, but all it really does is exhaust you. Thoughts like this rarely scream, they whisper, and the danger of a whisper is that you learn to live with it. Like background static you stop hearing until the silence becomes unbearable. There's a kind of mental pollution we've learned to breathe like air, and we wonder why peace feels foreign, why stillness feels unsafe, why happiness feels like something borrowed and quickly taken back. You don't have to fight these thoughts. You just need to expose them, name them, see them, refuse to feed them. The mind is not the enemy, but it becomes one when you believe it without question. That's where most suffering lives, in unexamined belief. You think, if I let go of this thought, I'll lose control. But control was never yours, only the illusion of it. Real control is presence, and presence requires silence. Not the kind of silence that hides pain, but the kind that invites truth. Look around. The room hasn't changed, but something in you has shifted. You're not just hearing your thoughts anymore. You're watching them, from a distance, from awareness. That shift is everything. It's the beginning of inner discipline, the kind that doesn't need force, only attention. Thoughts are not commands, they are suggestions, and most of them are outdated. They speak in the voice of your past. They echo the fears of others. They tell stories you've outgrown but never questioned. Until now. Peace doesn't arrive when the world calms down. It arrives when you stop treating every thought as a prophecy. Some of them are just noise with good grammar. So the first step is this. Don't believe everything that speaks inside you. Not every thought is yours. Not every voice is truth. Not every worry is wisdom. Let the noise talk, but don't answer. You are not the voice. You are the space it echoes through. There is a weight that thinking can't lift, and yet we keep piling thoughts on it, hoping one of them will be the answer. You replay conversations, imagine outcomes, create scenarios that never happened, but still leave you exhausted. This is the mind's theater, and you've been both the actor and the audience. But here's the truth. Mental clarity doesn't come from solving more. It comes from needing less to solve. We are taught that worry is responsibility, that overthinking is a sign of intelligence. But thinking without awareness is just noise in a suit, and it speaks with such confidence, you forget to question it. Did I say the wrong thing? Should I have done more? What if they misunderstood me? What if I fail? Each question a hook. Each hook a wound that doesn't bleed but stays. And the more you engage, the more it wraps around you, until even silence feels like something you need to explain. But not every silence is guilt. Some silences are healing. Some are boundaries. Some are truth, finally allowed to breathe. You don't have to explain your quiet. You don't owe anyone the version of you that constantly performs peace while crumbling inside. There's strength in stepping back, not to escape, but to see clearly. Because from a distance, you can finally see how many of your thoughts are just echoes of fear dressed as preparation. Prepare for the worst. Don't get your hopes up. Expect disappointment. That's not wisdom. That's inherited fear. Passed down like an heirloom nobody wants to question because it came from someone who meant well. But well-meaning fear is still fear, and you have the right to stop carrying it. There's nothing noble about staying tangled in what harms you just because someone once called it love or strength or being realistic. Your mind needs space. It needs silence that isn't filled immediately. It needs you to stop trying to fix everything before allowing anything to just be. So, breathe. Let the thought come and go. Like a cloud that doesn't ask you to hold it. Like a train you don't need to board. Not every idea needs a reaction. Not every emotion needs a label. Not every discomfort is a danger. You are allowed to observe without absorbing, to hear without obeying, to think and still be free. That is the beginning of internal freedom, not silence of words, but silence of belief in everything that passes through your mind. Sometimes the loudest thoughts are the ones that arrive without sound. They don't knock, they don't scream, they settle quietly, like dust on furniture you no longer clean, like background noise that became the atmosphere. They tell you, you should be further by now. You should have more to show. You shouldn't feel this way anymore. And without realizing, you nod. You agree. You make space for the shame to stay. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. Familiarity is not truth. And yet, we confuse the two because repetition makes anything feel real, even a lie. You've lived with these thoughts like a houseguest who never leaves. They eat at your energy, sleep in your silence, walk with you into every new opportunity and whisper, "You're not ready." You keep going, smiling, pushing, but some part of you is carrying a weight you were never meant to bear. And it's not life's weight. It's the weight of believing everything your mind throws at you, the overthinking, the self-doubt, the constant inner commentary that dresses itself in logic but drips with fear. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to argue. That's how it stays. By pulling you into dialogue, silence, that's what it doesn't know how to handle. Try it. Let the thought pass like a train through a station. Don't board, don't chase, just breathe. And suddenly, you notice something strange. You're still here, unmoved, unbroken, because not every thought is a threat, not every idea needs to be solved, not every inner voice is wise. Some are just echoes of old fear, wearing your voice. You are not that voice. You are not that story. You are not that doubt. You are the one watching it all from the quiet center that never left. That stillness is not emptiness. It's where your real life begins. but the mind will resist. It will panic in silence. It will demand stimulation, scroll, talk, eat, solve, distract, because stillness reveals what noise was hiding, and once you see it, you can't unsee. You'll begin to notice how much of your suffering was never caused by events, but by the meaning you gave them. You'll start to see that most of your inner pain was your mind, repeating old fears like a broken record, and now you can choose to stop the music. You can turn off the noise, not by force, but by choosing silence again and again, until it becomes your language. Peace is not something you earn, it's something you return to. And that return begins the moment you realize not every thought deserves a home in you. There's a thought that sounds like care, but it's control. It says, what if everything goes wrong? What if they leave? What if I fail again? It wears concern like a mask, but underneath is fear trying to protect itself. This kind of thinking pretends to be responsible. It calls itself preparation. It convinces you that if you worry enough, you'll suffer less later. But all it does is make you suffer now for things that haven't even happened. Anticipation becomes anxiety. Vigilance becomes exhaustion. You try to prevent pain by rehearsing it, and the mind applauds, because it thrives in chaos, disguised as strategy. But here's the truth. No amount of mental rehearsal will guarantee peace. Because peace doesn't come from control. It comes from surrender, not the passive kind, not giving up, but the quiet, grounded kind that says, I don't know what's coming, but I'll meet it when it comes. That kind of courage can't be built in theory. It's grown in stillness, in uncertainty, in the silent moments where you decide to live fully anyway. There's something powerful about accepting that not every chapter can be pre-written. Some pages must be lived line by line. And every time you try to write the ending before the story begins, you rob yourself of the present, of presence. What if, instead of obsessing over the future, you asked yourself, what is this moment asking of me? That's a question worry can't answer. Because worry is always somewhere else, always 5 steps ahead or 10 years behind. Never here, never now. But this breath, this moment, this awareness is all you truly have. And in this space, you are safe. Not because nothing bad can happen, but because you are no longer trying to live the next 10 lifetimes in one anxious heartbeat. You begin to realize peace is not the absence of problems. It's the refusal to let imaginary ones rule your life. You can let go of the thought that says you must be ready for everything. You're not a soldier in battle. You're a soul trying to be whole. And wholeness doesn't come from preemptive suffering. It comes from alignment, from listening, from saying, I trust myself enough to face what comes when it comes. That's real strength, not bracing for the fall, but walking anyway, with open hands. The mind may still whisper, what if it goes wrong? And now, you can smile gently and answer, then I will grow through it. Because the worst thing is not failing, it's never starting. Because fear wrote the script. And today, you take the pen back. There is a quiet belief, one you rarely speak aloud. I am not enough, not smart enough, not attractive enough, not disciplined, valuable, or lovable. Enough. It doesn't arrive like a scream. It arrives like a shadow, subtle but constant, present in your pauses, heavy in your silences. It hides beneath your ambition. It dresses itself as humility. It speaks in your own voice, so you forget to question it. You don't remember exactly when it took root, but you remember how it made you feel. Invisible, conditional, replaceable. Maybe it was a parent's distant eyes, a teacher's disappointment, a moment when you failed and no one told you failure was allowed. You built a life around compensating. You became efficient, pleasant, productive, self-sufficient. But beneath the surface, a quiet war continued. Because no matter how much you gave, how much you achieved, how deeply you cared, that voice still whispered, "It's not enough." And worse, "You're not enough." So you pushed harder, smiled longer, carried more than you should have, for people who never saw the weight, and every time you hoped it would finally be enough, the goalpost moved. The applause faded, the silence returned, and the question echoed louder. Why do I still feel empty? The truth is brutal, but freeing. No amount of external proof can heal an internal wound you've never touched. You've been trying to fix your worth by collecting evidence, but worth was never something to prove. It was something to remember. Underneath all the masks, you are not broken. You are bruised by expectations you were never meant to carry. You are tired from running toward acceptance that should have met you at the beginning. And now you're invited to stop running, not because you've given up, but because you've awakened. The one who keeps chasing is not the real you. It's the story, the echo, the program, but your soul, your quiet self. It has never doubted you. It waits in the silence beneath all that noise. And when you finally listen, you don't hear shame, you hear truth. You were never meant to be perfect, you were meant to be whole. That means resting without guilt, speaking without apology, choosing peace even if others call it selfish. It means finally giving yourself what the world never did, unconditional presence. Some will call it ego. Let them. Some will misunderstand your silence. Let them. This path is not about being understood. It's about being real. And the most real thing you can do now is release the thought that has caged you for so long. I am not enough. No, you are not that sentence. You are the one who survived despite it. And now, you're free to let it go. There's a thought that sounds noble, but quietly destroys you. I can't disappoint anyone. It wears the mask of responsibility. It hides behind the word loyalty. It convinces you that your worth is measured by how little you let others down. So you say yes when your soul says no. You show up when your body is asking for rest. You smile when your heart wants silence. You become everything for everyone and disappear to yourself. At first, it feels like kindness, like being a good friend, a good partner, a good son, a good human, but then the cost appears in the quiet. You begin to feel invisible in your own life, used, not seen, appreciated maybe, but never truly known. And underneath it all, resentment grows. Not because others are cruel, but because you abandoned your own boundaries in the name of being good, and no one noticed, because you made it look easy. But inside you're tired of apologizing for your needs, tired of managing emotions that aren't yours to carry, tired of being the safe place for people who never asked how you are. This is the silent suffering of the peacemaker, the helper, the invisible strong one. But here's the truth. You don't owe anyone a version of you that costs your soul. Compassion without boundaries is self-erasure, and saying no is not betrayal, it's alignment. The people meant for your life will not shatter because you chose yourself. They will adjust, or they will leave, and both are answers, because love that demands you abandon yourself is not love, it's dependency, it's performance, it's silence, dressed as harmony. You were not born to be a mirror for others to feel comfortable. You were born to be whole, to honor your limits without guilt, to speak even if your voice shakes, to rest even when the world calls you lazy. You are allowed to disappoint people who built their expectations on a version of you that was never real. That is not cruelty, it's truth. And truth, even when it breaks illusions, sets you free. So pause and ask yourself, where have I been quiet just to be loved? Where have I said yes just to avoid distance? And is that really love or fear of being left? Peace doesn't come from pleasing everyone. It comes from respecting yourself enough to stop, to breathe, to say, this is my limit. This is what I need. This is who I am, with or without your approval. That's not rebellion. It's liberation, and you've earned it, not by being perfect, but by finally being honest. There's a thought that disguises itself as motivation. I should be further by now. It whispers this when you wake up tired, when you scroll past someone else's success, when the day feels heavy before it even begins. It doesn't shout, it doesn't accuse, it just lingers, a low hum of disappointment you can't quite explain. You look at your life, your pace, your progress, and feel behind, as if you're running a race but never crossing any finish line. You see others moving faster, building more, becoming more, and without permission, you start using their timeline to measure your worth. But here's the truth. You were never late, because there was never one path, one pace, one standard of enough. The world sold you urgency disguised as ambition. It taught you to chase moments instead of living them, to idolize speed as if stillness meant failure. But stillness is often where real clarity lives. Growth doesn't always look like motion. Sometimes it looks like confusion. Sometimes it looks like waiting. Sometimes it looks like falling apart, just so you can come back together, truer. When you constantly compare your journey, you abandon your rhythm. You trade peace for pressure, presence for panic, and the soul cannot breathe when it's being rushed. So what if you stopped asking, "Why am I not further?" and instead asked, "What have I quietly survived to still be here?" Because maybe what you've built isn't visible yet. Maybe your progress can't be measured in numbers. Maybe your real growth was learning to keep going when no one clapped, when no one noticed, when the only one witnessing your evolution was you. That counts deeply. The tree doesn't rush its bloom, the ocean doesn't apologize for its tide, and your life doesn't need to match anyone else's map. You're not a project, you're a process, and you are not behind. You are within your own unfolding, your own pace, your own sacred season. So breathe and remind yourself, comparison is a thief, and it always steals from what you were meant to see in yourself. Come back to now, to here, to the step you're on. This step matters, even if it's small, even if it's quiet, because wholeness is not found at the end. It's built in the middle, one honest moment at a time. There's a thought that grows in the silence between words. If I speak, they might leave. It doesn't say it out loud. It waits. It waits for the moment you feel something real, then wraps that feeling in hesitation. You want to say, "I'm not okay. I'm tired. I feel alone even when I'm surrounded." But the words stay stuck behind your teeth, because somewhere you were taught that truth costs connection, that honesty leads to distance, that vulnerability is the beginning of abandonment. So you smile instead, you nod. You carry the conversation like a fragile vase that might shatter if you place even 1 ounce of your truth inside it. And what does that create? Company without closeness, conversations without depth, affection that feels like a performance. They see your face, but never your ache. They hear your laugh, but never your silence. And you keep shrinking to keep them close. But here's what no one told you. Real love doesn't flee from truth. Real connection can hold discomfort. It doesn't run when you tremble. If they leave because you spoke honestly, they were never staying for you. They were staying for the mask, for the illusion, for the version of you that made them feel comfortable. You don't need to be palatable to be loved. You don't need to dilute your truth to earn presence. And yes, sometimes speaking up will cost you people, but it will also return you to yourself. And that return is everything. Because every time you silence your needs, you betray your own heart. And betrayal from others hurts, but betrayal from yourself wounds you in places no one can see. So speak, even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble, Even if no one claps afterward, your truth is not an inconvenience, it's not a burden, it is sacred, and it deserves air. You are not responsible for how others receive your honesty. You are only responsible for no longer burying it. Let silence be a choice, not a habit. Let your voice become familiar, not foreign, because the life you want is on the other side of the conversation you're afraid to have. And the people who truly see you will not leave. They'll stay. They'll soften. They'll open too, because truth is contagious, and someone has to speak it first. Let it be you. There's a thought that sounds like strength. Everything depends on me. It's the silent burden you carry, the pressure to hold it all together, to be the solution, the planner, the protector, the one who can't afford to fall apart. You've worn it like armor. You've called it responsibility. You've used it to justify why you never ask for help, why you keep moving when everything inside you says stop. But here's the quiet truth. That belief is not power. It's fear. Fear that if you let go, everything will collapse. Fear that if you stop, the world will forget you. Fear that being supported makes you weak. But strength was never about carrying it all. It's about knowing when to carry and when to release. You were not built to be the only one holding the weight. You're not a lifeline for everyone else's survival. You're a human with needs, limits, exhaustion that matters, and somewhere along the way, you confused love with sacrifice. You started measuring your value by how much you endure and how little you need. But no one wins in that equation. Because while you're saving everyone, you're slowly losing yourself. And the irony is, no one asked you to be the hero. You stepped into that role because it made you feel safe, because it distracted you from your own pain, because helping others was easier than being honest about how tired you are. But what if you stopped? What if just for a moment you allowed yourself to be held, to be vulnerable without guilt? To say, I don't have it all together, and let that be okay. Real strength is found in shared weight, in asking, in receiving, and in knowing that your value doesn't shrink when you lean. You are not abandoning anyone by choosing yourself. You are showing them how to live honestly. And maybe, just maybe, they've been waiting for permission to do the same. Because this world doesn't need more martyrs. It needs more people who model balance, people who know how to rest without apology, who know when to give and when to protect their own light. So take off the armor. Let the silence in. Let the tension drop from your shoulders. Let the idea that everything depends on you die here. It was never true. You matter. Your presence is powerful. But you don't have to burn to keep others warm. Let others carry the weight too. Let the world support you back. Let life flow through shared hands. You are not alone, and you were never meant to be. There's a voice inside you that sounds disciplined, but it's really fear in uniform. I can't show weakness. You repeat this in moments of pain, moments of loss, moments when your eyes water but you hold them still. You clench your jaw, you steady your breath, you nod and say, I'm fine. Because the world taught you that strength is silence, that tears are surrender. That trembling hands mean you've already lost. So you build a wall. You call it maturity. You call it resilience. But it's not resilience. It's retreat. A slow evacuation from your own humanity. You stop asking for comfort. You stop showing sadness. You only reveal the polished parts. The tidy answers, the calm responses, the controlled expression. But strength was never about hiding. It was about standing in the storm without needing to pretend it doesn't hurt. Real courage is not found in the absence of emotion, but in the decision to feel and remain. You've worn stoicism like a mask, not the philosophy, but the misinterpretation, thinking that self-control means emotional invisibility. But invisible pain doesn't disappear. It just settles deeper, and it leaks out, in fatigue, in tension, in isolation that no one can name. You don't need to collapse to be noticed. You don't need to shatter to be seen. You only need to allow a sliver of truth to break through. I'm not okay. I need space. I don't have the answers. These aren't signs of weakness. They're signs of awakening, of remembering that you are more than your role, more than your performance, more than the story that says you only matter when you're strong. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not hold it together. Sometimes it's letting your voice shake while you speak anyway. Sometimes it's allowing your eyes to soften and not looking away, because someone out there is watching you, not for perfection, but for permission. Permission to feel, to break, to breathe without armor. And if you give yourself that gift, you give it to them too. You shift the world by shifting one belief, that being human isn't weakness, it's the deepest kind of strength. There's a thought that hides behind every question mark. I need to understand everything. It seems noble, curious, even wise, but behind it lives a kind of panic, the fear of uncertainty, the discomfort of surrender, the ache of not knowing, and still moving forward. You chase answers like they will save you. You dissect every moment, search every word, analyze every silence, as if clarity is the only way you'll feel safe. But life was never meant to be a puzzle you solve in advance. Some things are not meant to be understood, they're meant to be lived. You don't need to understand the storm to survive it. You don't need to name the wind to feel its pull. You don't need to trace every cause to release the effect. This obsession with answers can become a prison. You sit with pain, and instead of letting it breathe, you interrogate it. Why am I like this? What's the lesson? What's the meaning? But sometimes there is no clean meaning, no hidden message, no divine explanation wrapped in logic. Sometimes there is only this: you're hurting, and that's okay. You're lost, and that's human. You're unsure, and still worthy. The desire to explain everything is often a desire to avoid feeling, because feeling is raw, messy, uncontrollable. But in the mess, that's where your soul stretches. That's where wisdom is formed not by thought, but by presence, by staying without needing to fix, without demanding clarity. You are not a machine. You are a mystery meant to be discovered over time, not decoded all at once. What if you let go of needing to know? What if you replaced every why with a gentle, I'm here? What if the healing isn't in the answer, but in your willingness to walk forward anyway? This is not ignorance. This is surrender, the kind that says, I trust what I can't yet see. I trust what I don't yet understand, and I trust myself to hold it all without breaking, because maybe peace doesn't come from answers. Maybe it comes from permission to not have them. There's a belief quietly shaping your inner world. If I slow down, I'll fall behind. It's not always spoken. It lives in your calendar, in your racing thoughts, in the way you check your phone even when there's nothing urgent. It's the reason your rest feels like guilt, the reason silence feels like pressure, because somewhere along the way you confused movement with meaning, speed with success, busy with worthy. But what if the rush isn't getting you anywhere? What if running faster is just helping you avoid stillness? The stillness that holds the truth you've been trying not to feel. We've been conditioned to fear slowness, to believe that if we're not growing quickly, we're wasting time, that if we're not producing, we're falling behind, that if we stop, someone else will pass us. But life is not a race, and fulfillment is not a finish line. What if slowing down isn't falling behind, but catching up to yourself, to the moment, to your own breath, to the version of you that doesn't need to impress anyone? Because growth that is forced is fragile, but growth that is rooted is unstoppable. The seed doesn't rush its bloom. It breaks slowly, underground, in darkness, in quiet, and you are blooming too. But if you never pause, you'll miss it. You'll miss the subtle shifts, the quiet awakenings, the sacred moments where life whispers instead of shouts. You'll miss the chance to meet yourself outside of what you do. So ask yourself gently, who am I without the pace, without the proving, without the pressure to arrive. If that question feels empty, that's not failure, that's the invitation to slow down, to sit with what rises, to stop running from the feeling that maybe you don't need to be more. Maybe you just need to be here, to walk instead of sprint, to breathe without urgency, to listen without planning your reply. Because peace doesn't live at the end of your checklist. It lives in the moment you realize you were never meant to rush toward your life, but to walk through it, aware, soft, present, not behind, not ahead, just here. There's a thought that wears the mask of nobility. I shouldn't let anyone down. It sounds kind, honorable, like integrity wrapped in empathy. But look closer, and you'll see the cost. You say yes when your soul whispers no. You stretch yourself thin so others don't feel discomfort. You carry weight that doesn't belong to you, just to keep the peace. You become dependable, predictable, always there. And slowly, invisibly, you vanish from your own life. Because in trying not to disappoint anyone, you disappoint yourself. You abandon your limits. You silence your truth. You become the version of you that is easiest to love, easiest to accept, easiest to keep around, but not the version that's real. And that's not loyalty, that's fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being labeled selfish, fear of being left for finally choosing you. So you stay silent, you over-deliver, you become whatever they need and forget what you need. But here's the truth. You were never supposed to be everything for everyone. You were supposed to be true, present, honest, even if that honesty disrupts an expectation, even if your truth creates distance, because love that requires your silence is not love. It's convenience. And peace bought through self-abandonment is not peace. It's a slow erosion. Real relationships can hold disappointment. They can bend, they can stretch, they can survive the truth. If someone walks away because you honored your boundary, they were walking on borrowed time. And what leaves creates space for what's real to stay. You are allowed to be misunderstood. You are allowed to disappoint people who expected you to betray yourself. Because you are not responsible for everyone's emotions. You are responsible for staying rooted in yours. This isn't rebellion, it's remembrance of who you are beneath the mask, of the version of you that doesn't perform for love but receives it freely or not at all. So breathe and let go of the thought that says they'll only stay if I stay silent. Let them meet you fully or let them leave. You will not crumble. You'll return to your center, to your strength, to the place in you that no longer asks for permission to exist. There's a thought that hides beneath responsibility. If I stop, everything falls apart. It sounds like strength, like leadership, like someone who holds the world together with steady hands, but quietly. It's panic, the fear of what will break if you loosen your grip, the fear of being seen as replaceable if you rest, the fear of losing love if you stop performing. So you keep going, even when you're tired, even when no one asks. You hold space, solve problems, clean messes you didn't make, not because you were asked, but because somewhere inside you believe that holding it all makes you worthy. But that belief is a slow burning fire, because eventually your hands begin to shake. Your smile fades, your body aches, and still you carry it all. Out of habit, out of guilt, out of a story that told you love must be earned through effort. But that's not love, that's a transaction. And you were never meant to be a transaction. You were meant to be held to, supported, listened to, seen beyond your usefulness. You don't have to prove your place by being everything to everyone. You don't have to be the strong one every hour of every day. Sometimes true strength is in letting go, letting someone else step in, letting the dishes wait, letting the world spin without your supervision. The ones who love you will still be here. And if they disappear when you stop performing, let them. Your worth is not measured by your output. Your exhaustion is not a badge of honor. It's a signal, and maybe, just maybe, you've done enough. Not forever, not as a goodbye, but enough. For now. Enough to rest, enough to exhale, enough to remember what it feels like to exist without tension. Let the world breathe without you for a moment. It won't collapse. And if it does, maybe it needed to. Not everything you hold is yours to carry. Not every task is yours to complete. Not every burden is yours to fix. Your job is not to hold the sky. Your job is to live under it, fully, freely, honestly. Let go, even just for a little while, and see what peace feels like when your hands are empty but your heart is full. There's a voice you've grown used to living with. It doesn't scream, it doesn't argue, it just stays. It says, don't show them your struggle. Don't let them see your cracks. Hold it together, or they'll pull away. And so you do. You become composed, unshakable, dependable. But underneath the calm is pressure, weight, a trembling you hide even from yourself. You've mastered the art of silent suffering because you thought that's what strong people do. You help, you show up, you never burden. And slowly you become the one others lean on, but no one leans into. And that leaves a different kind of emptiness, not loud but aching. Because inside every silent helper lives a quiet question. Will someone ever notice that I'm tired too? But you don't ask, because asking feels dangerous. It feels like unraveling, so you stay quiet, grateful for the role, terrified to lose it. Because if you're not the strong one, who are you? But what if strength was never about holding everything in? What if the most powerful thing you could do was let someone see what you hide so well? Your doubt, your need, your exhaustion. Not for sympathy, not for attention, but for connection. Real connection, the kind that doesn't require performance. You weren't meant to be a statue. You were meant to be seen, fully, truthfully, even when it's messy, especially when it's messy, because the people who matter don't need you to be invincible. They need you to be honest. They don't love you because you never fall. They love you because you rise as yourself. You don't have to carry silence as proof of strength. You don't have to swallow your truth just to stay close. Let someone meet you where you are, even if your voice trembles, even if the words come slowly. Let yourself be known without the armor. That is real strength. Not polished, not perfect, but human. And that's more than enough. There's a belief woven into the way you breathe. If I don't stay alert, something will go wrong. It sounds like awareness. It feels like vigilance. But what it really is hyper-survival. The inability to relax, the habit of scanning every room, every tone, every silence for what might turn into danger. You don't call it fear, you call it being prepared. You call it just how I am. But beneath that alertness lives a nervous system that never learned to rest, because somewhere rest meant vulnerability, and vulnerability once meant pain. So you stay ready, ready to respond, ready to explain, ready to protect, even when no threat is there, even when the room is safe, even when your body begs for stillness, but the alarm keeps ringing, not outside, but inside. And the longer it rings, the more you confuse safety with tension, as if calm is something dangerous, as if letting go will make the world collapse. But you can't live like this forever, always on, always alert, always managing the invisible, because even if nothing goes wrong, you'll miss everything that's right. You'll miss the beauty in soft moments, the laughter that isn't scanned, the conversations that don't need interpreting. You'll miss the deep exhale that only arrives when you stop anticipating pain. So ask yourself gently, what would it feel like to not be on guard? Not forever, just for a moment. What would it feel like to walk into a room and not prepare for rejection? To speak without rehearsing the worst response? To sit without thinking of the next thing you need to solve? That is freedom. And it's not found in control. It's found in release. You don't have to be 10 steps ahead to be safe. You don't have to predict pain to deserve peace. Peace doesn't come when everything is perfect. It comes when you stop living as if something terrible is always one breath away. It comes when you look around and finally tell your body, you're safe now, you can come home. And then you breathe differently, you see differently, you live, not to prevent pain, but to embrace the beauty you never noticed while you were bracing. There's a thought that sounds like clarity, but it clouds everything. I need to figure it all out. It feels responsible, like a mission, like the only way to move forward is by understanding every detail before you take a single step. So you wait and think and overthink. You analyze every option, every outcome, every imagined version of the future. You call it planning. But what it really is fear in disguise. The fear of choosing wrong, of wasting time, of missing out. So you stay in your head, trying to solve life like a puzzle you can finish on paper before living it. But life isn't solved, it's experienced. And some of the most important steps don't come with certainty. They come with risk, with feeling, with trust. The need to figure it all out often blocks the thing you truly need: movement. You learn by walking, you grow by doing, you find clarity by beginning, not by waiting for it to appear. Some of your greatest transformations won't arrive with an answer. They'll arrive when you say, I don't know where this leads, but I'll go anyway. And suddenly, what felt impossible starts to unfold. Not because you cracked the code, but because you stopped demanding one. You trusted the step instead of the plan. There's a part of you that already knows what to do, but you've been drowning it in questions, in what-ifs, in timelines you think you have to follow. But time doesn't care about your strategy. It only cares that you're present for it, that you show up, that you try. And failure, it's not the enemy. Avoiding yourself is. So stop waiting to understand everything before you live anything. Some of the most beautiful lives were built through trial, through imperfect decisions, through grace found only after the leap. Let go of the need to control every piece. Let go of the pressure to predict every outcome. Live, try, be confused, learn anyway. You don't need a perfect plan. You need presence, you need courage. You need the willingness to begin without knowing how it ends. That is wisdom in motion. And it begins the moment you stop asking, what should I do? And start whispering, I'm ready to find out. There's a whisper inside you that pretends to be logic. If I just think a little more, maybe I'll finally feel peace. So you keep thinking and thinking and thinking. Like maybe the next thought will be the one that fixes everything, the one that makes the pain make sense, the one that ends the noise. But that moment never comes. Because you're not thinking for clarity. You're thinking to avoid feeling, avoiding grief, avoiding regret, avoiding uncertainty you can't control. The mind becomes a maze, and you run in circles around questions with no doors. What if I fail? What if they don't care? What if I never heal? And with each question, you go deeper into the mind, but further from yourself. You lose sleep trying to mentally organize what only the heart can understand. And slowly, you forget what stillness feels like. Because stillness doesn't come from thinking your way into it. It comes when you finally stop trying. Not in surrender to defeat, but in surrender to presence. You don't have to figure everything out to be okay. You don't need all the answers to take the next breath. There is wisdom in not knowing. There is peace in releasing the urge to mentally fix what can only be felt. The wound doesn't need a lecture. It needs light. It needs warmth. It needs truth, without explanation. So what if you stopped thinking about healing and simply allowed yourself to feel? What if you trusted the ache instead of interrogating it? What if you stopped assuming that every emotion is a problem to solve and saw it instead as a messenger to receive? There's nothing wrong with you for being confused. There's nothing wrong with you for not having a plan. There's only something wrong when you abandon your present for a future you're trying to mentally control. The truth: most of your clarity won't come from the mind. It will come from the moments you stop resisting your reality, the moments you breathe without needing a reason. So pause. Let the thoughts pass like traffic. You are not the cars. You are the space they move through, and in that space you are free. Not because you found all the answers, but because you stopped believing you needed them all. There's a thought that lives so deep inside you it doesn't feel like a thought anymore. It feels like instinct, like air, like something that's always been there. I can't afford to feel this. You don't say it aloud. You say it through distraction, through tension, through the way you keep moving even when your soul is tired. You become functional, efficient, capable, so good at surviving you forget what it feels like to simply exist. You make coffee instead of crying. You smile instead of explaining. You keep going because stopping feels dangerous. Because if you stop, you'll have to feel, and if you feel, you're afraid everything will fall apart, so you keep it buried, folded behind your routines, tucked beneath your roles, hidden under the armor you've worn so long you don't know who you are without it. But buried emotion doesn't disappear. It waits. It waits behind your breath that never fully deepens, behind your shoulders that forget how to drop, behind your voice that always sounds a little too steady. It waits until the moment you slow down, until the world quiets, until you run out of distractions, and then it whispers, "I'm still here," not to punish you, not to shame you, but to free you, because the feelings you've been avoiding aren't your enemy. They're messages, markers, memories still trying to be honored. Your sadness is not weakness. Your anger is not failure. Your fear is not proof that you're broken. They are remnants of pain you weren't ready to hold when it first arrived. But now you're strong enough to feel without losing yourself. The act of feeling is not collapse, it's return. Return to your body, to your breath, to the truth that's been waiting beneath the noise. So what if you gave yourself permission, not to explain or justify, but simply to feel? What if the tears came and you didn't wipe them away? What if the tension rose and you didn't resist it? What if instead of managing your emotions, you let them pass through like weather, trusting that they won't destroy you, only clean you? Because they will pass. They always do. And when they do, something softer remains. Clarity, stillness, self. You don't have to fall apart to be real. You just have to stop pretending you're not already carrying too much. There is a quiet bravery in letting the storm touch you without apology. A sacred strength in saying, "I'm hurting, and I won't hide." This doesn't make you fragile. It makes you whole. You've learned to survive by closing, but now you get to live by opening. And not everyone will understand. Some will feel uncomfortable. Some will walk away. Let them. What stays will be what's true. And you will no longer belong to the version of you that was built for performance. You'll belong to the version that breathes fully, feels freely, and heals without needing to be fixed. That's the you that's been waiting beneath the silence. There's a silence you've grown used to, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that feels like absence, like standing in a crowded room and still feeling unseen. It's not that people don't speak to you, it's that they don't see you. Not the you behind the smile, not the you behind the strength, only the version you keep presenting. Polished, polite, predictable. You learn to be easy to love, to shrink your pain, to soften your truth, to become someone who doesn't disrupt the comfort of others. But inside, there's a quiet rebellion growing, a part of you that's tired of dimming, tired of nodding, tired of molding yourself into the image that keeps everyone else happy. Because in trying to belong everywhere, you stopped belonging to yourself. And that loss is heavy, not loud, but constant. It shows up in the tension behind your eyes, in the fake laugh that feels just a second too long, in the way you say, "I'm fine," before anyone finishes asking. But you're not fine, you're tired of performing, of adjusting, of translating your truth into something more palatable. And somewhere inside, you know, you weren't born to be agreeable. You were born to be authentic. And authenticity, it costs. It might cost approval. It might cost roles you've played for years. It might cost relationships that were built on the version of you that never said no. But what it gives in return is everything. Self-respect, inner peace, the ability to look in the mirror and see someone you trust. So ask yourself honestly, who do you become when you think love depends on your silence? Who do you abandon just to be accepted? And is that acceptance even real? You were never meant to be a reflection of other people's comfort. You were meant to be a presence, clear, grounded, and true. Let some people misunderstand you. Let some people walk away. Let discomfort rise in the space where your truth finally enters. It's okay to lose people when you stop losing yourself. Not everyone will celebrate your voice, but the ones who stay, they'll stay for you. Not your performance, not your compliance, but your truth. And that truth, it's not too much. It's not too loud. It's not too complicated. It's sacred. Even when shaky, even when messy, especially when it finally breaks free. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You only need to be honest with yourself. And that moment, when you stop editing your soul just to fit in, that's when you begin to return to who you were before the world told you who to be. So speak, not to be heard, but to be real. Stand, not to impress, but to feel your own weight. Choose yourself, not as an act of rebellion, but as a quiet revolution back to wholeness. There's a thought so deeply rooted in your mind that you stopped noticing it was there. I need to understand everything. It doesn't scream. It doesn't demand. It lingers like a hum beneath every question, every moment of silence, every pain you can't explain. You feel the ache and your mind begins working. What caused this? What's the lesson? What's the pattern I missed? You want a reason, a clean one. You want a map that shows you why things happened the way they did. But life rarely gives you that. Some things break without meaning to teach. Some people leave without a deeper truth to reveal. Some moments hurt simply because they hurt. And that truth is hard to sit with, because the mind wants order, wants logic, wants a place to put the pain so it makes sense. But pain isn't always logical. It doesn't always follow a clean line. It doesn't always arrive with purpose. And when you try to force it into meaning, you miss the invitation it brings, not to understand, but to accept. There's a difference. Understanding says, I'll heal when I figure it out. Acceptance says, I'll heal even if I never do. That shift is where peace begins, because some wounds won't close with answers. They close with presence, with softness, with letting go of the need to explain what cannot be explained. You are not broken because you don't know why it happened. You are not weak because the meaning still feels distant. You are human, a living mystery trying to make sense in a world that often doesn't. And your healing is not delayed just because the story is incomplete. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is, I don't know, and I'm okay with that, because when you stop demanding clarity, you create space for peace. When you stop chasing the reason, you finally feel the release. And maybe that's the real wisdom, not to solve life, but to live it, not to find the meaning, but to embody it, not to dissect the silence, but to rest in it. You don't need every thread to weave something beautiful. You don't need every answer to begin again. So let the questions remain. Let the doubt sit beside you. Let the unknown stay unknown without punishing yourself for it. You're not failing by not understanding. You're growing by still walking, still breathing, still trusting what hasn't revealed itself yet. That trust, that willingness to live without needing a guarantee, is a form of spiritual strength few ever reach. And you're already on the path. So stay there, gently, bravely, quietly. Let go of the thought that everything must be clear before it can be beautiful, because some of the most meaningful chapters will never make sense on paper, but they will reshape your soul in silence, in surrender, in love that no explanation could ever touch. You've walked through thoughts that wore many faces, the helpful, the rational, the urgent, the loyal, and one by one, you've seen what hides beneath them. Fear, exhaustion, the longing to be enough, the silent plea to be seen without having to perform. These thoughts, they didn't arrive as enemies. They came as survival, coping, adaptation. At some point they protected you, kept you safe, helped you navigate a world that didn't always offer tenderness. But now, you've outgrown them, not because you're stronger, not because you've solved everything, but because you've become still enough to see what's yours and what was borrowed, to see what's truth and what's habit, to see where you've been carrying what never belonged to you. And that sight, that quiet clarity, is where liberation begins. You don't need to fight your mind. You don't need to silence every thought. You only need to notice who you become when you believe them, and who you return to when you don't. That returning, that sacred, soft remembering, is your home. You will still hear the noise, the what-ifs, the guilt, the urge to over-explain, overwork, overgive. But now, you know better. You can pause, you can listen, you can breathe, not as a reaction, but as a choice. You can let the thought rise without letting it rule. You can feel the emotion without letting it define you. You can sit in uncertainty without calling it failure. Because peace is not the absence of thoughts. It's the presence of awareness. It's the ability to let the storm swirl without running to fix it, without identifying with it, without losing yourself inside it. You are not your mind. You are the stillness watching it move. You are the calm beneath the noise, the depth beneath the waves, the sky behind the clouds. And in that space, in that sacred space, you are free. Not because life is quiet, but because you are. Because you've stopped mistaking movement for meaning. You've stopped confusing control with power. You've stopped giving your inner peace to every voice that demands your energy. This is the gift. You now know you can let go without falling apart. You can be misunderstood without losing your value. You can rest without becoming irrelevant. You can be whole, even in pieces. And when the next thought comes, and it will, you'll meet it with softness. You'll smile at it like an old companion you no longer follow, and then you'll return to the breath, to now, to what's real, to the part of you that never needed fixing, only remembering. The mind may speak, let it, but your soul knows silence. And in that silence, you are safe. You are steady, you are home.